My name is Yasin Espinosa. I was born and raised in Småland, Gislaved. Småland is famous for its lakes, its forests, its beautiful landscapes, but also the many stories that come from here. Jan Bauer, the painter, who was inspired by the forest, Astrid Lindgren, who told the stories of her own childhood, and many others that are now world-renowned. Vilhelm Moberg, who told the stories about the people from Småland, starving to death, struggling, looking for a better life. And I guess in a way most of us are. We're always striving to find a better life, which is understandable. But there was a period where Småland was thriving, had plenty of factories. This could attract a lot of people from the outside. Småland needed the people needed the jobs. And for a while it was working. People built communities around the factories. Good wages, good products. There was a sense of pride. People believed in it. There was something they could build a future around. But a lot has changed since then. The cities grew taller, wider. More and more people moved there, looking for a better life. Yet again. People go where they believe there is a future, where they can be happy. We believe a lot of the problems the big cities are facing today, the solution to those problems actually lie in Småland, in other rural areas around the world. We know a lot of people packing their bags because they believe their jobs and the future lies in the cities. But we also know a lot of factories have left Sweden to go to China and other places. So how will the future of tomorrow look for people in Småland? First, we must understand how the current affairs are affecting the people around the world, the issues that derive from this urbanization. So we decided to look into it, to make sense of the current trends.
Garbage collectors in Paris have now been on strike for 19 days. It's becoming the ideal environment for rats to thrive. These rodents carry a range of diseases which are spread through their urine and feces.
We are far from being in a germ-free environment. In a sense, streets are becoming dangerous, so we must try to protect the population as much as possible.
Bostadspriserna här fortsätter att öka. För årets 3 första månader, det visar färska siffror från Svenska mäklarstatistik. Totalt köptes det bostäder för 136 miljarder kronor under årets första 3 månader. En ökning med 15%. Men ökningen är ojämnt fördelad över landet. Priset på bostäder i de attraktiva storstäderna drar ifrån resten av riket. Och för ungdomar och nyinflyttade blir det allt svårare att ta sig in på bostadsmarknaden.
De här städerna som går just bra, de har ju då arbetena och dit flyttar folk där arbetena finns. Medan då orter som ligger lite runt om, de tappar då både folk och arbeten, tyvärr.
So if everything is more expensive in these cities, everything costs more, prices for housing are skyrocketing. People know about these issues, but do they really understand it? Do they understand how these issues of urbanization is connected to so many other issues I believe if people knew about the opportunities the rural areas provide, they would be more willing to give it a chance. I mean, 68% of the world population is projected to be living in urban areas, and in Sweden we already have 88% living in urban environments. These are issues we need to solve today, before it's too late. So we took the car and we drove towards Hestra. Hestra is in the northwest of Småland and is part of the municipality of Gislaved. There we met with someone who used to live in a big city, but who'd made the move and moved to the rural area. We wanted to see her story, listen to her story. This is my aunt Aurina, one of my closest friends' mother. We're really happy to have her here with us. Así que, Jaco, cuéntame un poco de ti. ¿Dónde naciste?
Nací en Santiago de Chile en el año 63, de una familia de 6 hermanos. Mis padres eran empresarios. A los 33 años mis padres se separaron. Después de una semana que mamá se fue de casa, yo también tomé mi hijo y me fui a vivir sola en otra comuna con mi hijo. Ahí vivimos como 5 años. Me compré mi propio departamento en Santiago Centro. En la misma comuna, Santiago es súper grande. Santiago tiene 8 comunas. Viven actualmente 9 millones de personas en Santiago, con todas las comunas juntas. Como creció tanto, se dividió en comunas, en sectores. Mira, yo trabajé mucho desde los 18 años. Todo ese tiempo yo siempre me eduqué, me perfeccioné en mi profesión. Yo empecé siendo secretaria comercial y de ahí fui estudiando administración, economía. Para mí la vida de Santiago era fantástica. Siempre tuve buenos trabajos, viví en buenos lugares, mucha gente. Ya los últimos años, por así decirlo, ya cuando ya estaba cumplí los 37, 36, sentí que Santiago ya para mí me estaba ahogando porque llegó un momento en que yo iba por la calle principal y un montón de gente y me sentí que me estaba sofocando. Santiago es bonito, grande, muchas oportunidades de trabajo, sí, pero la vida es estresante. Es estresante porque mucha gente. También es estresante en el sentido de que los trayectos son muy largos y tú te demoras mucho de un lugar a otro. De tu casa a tu trabajo son muchas horas. O sea, 1 hora en la micro, 1 hora en un taco. Sí, me empezó a sofocar Santiago. También en el sentido de cuando pasas de los 35 en el caso de la mujer, ya empiezas a ser demasiado competitivo en los trabajos. Santiago además es una selva de cemento donde ya me estaba ahogando, que no hay tantos árboles. Algunos lugares donde eran hermosos, había mucha naturaleza, los destruyeron, construyeron edificios, nuevos condominios. Santiago empezó a ser lo que yo llamo en estos momentos una selva de cemento. Toda la gente de fuera de Santiago quería venir a Santiago a encontrar nuevas oportunidades, los estudios, las universidades, que el centro de la universidad está en Santiago, la gran mayoría, y las carreras más como medicina y todo lo que tenga que ver con las profesiones lucrativas están en Santiago. Entonces empezó Santiago a crecer demasiado, mucha gente, y para mí, en lo personal, cambió mi vida. Viví hasta que tenía 42 años y en el año 2005 me cambié aquí a Suecia. Llegué a vivir a Gislaved, estuve viviendo un par de años ahí, hasta que compramos esta casa con Oscar, mi pareja.
Mira, bacán.
Y cuando yo conocí esta casa, vine el día lunes, sentí que estaba en mi casa, me sentí así como bien, que la casa tenía buena energía, porque yo creo en eso. Sentía bien, no me sentía que la casa se me caía encima, sino que sentí que la casa me abrazaba, me sentí muy bien. Cuando yo llegué a esta casa y vi el terreno afuera de la casa, empezamos a arreglar el terreno porque era pura piedra.
¿Acá?
Sí.
Ah, mira.
Entonces fuimos sacando las piedras y empezamos a arreglar la tierra, y empezamos a sembrar papas, sembrar habas, arvejas, zapallo. Me gustan mucho las flores, así que improvisé un jardín pequeño ahí, con solamente tulipanes y cosas así. Después me fui al otro extremo de mi casa, donde había una tremenda piedra, pero no pudimos sacar esa piedra con Oscar, porque es gigante para abajo. Así que decidí hacer un jardín redondo, con distintas cosas. Empezamos a plantar ahí distintas cosas, lavanda sobre todo. Y dentro de nuestro proyecto, cuando vimos que las abejas estaban desapareciendo, tomamos la decisión con mi pareja de aportar algo al universo, a la naturaleza, y empezamos a cuidar las abejas. Fuimos a cursos antes de comprar nuestros primeros panales y pertenecemos a una Ferenni, un grupo donde siempre estamos participando, actualizando, viendo todas las enfermedades. Y conjuntamente con cuidar la abeja empezamos a ver qué flores pasaban. Y la lavanda y muchas flores especiales fuimos plantando en nuestro jardín de flores.
Ah, específicamente para
las abejas. Y también empezamos a plantar árboles frutales, porque aquí no había ningún árbol frutal. Manzanos, peras, durazno, cerezas, tenemos varias cerezas, ciruelas. Hemos plantado hartos árboles detrás. También construimos una Bäst, una pequeña. Ahora, el año pasado, instalamos una más grande y la subimos más alta. Dentro de ellas hay uvas, parrones. Y en la grande tenemos en el medio plantado un ciruelo.
Bacán.
El año pasado nos dio uva, los parrones crecieron y ya empezamos a hacer almácigos de tomate, de todos los almácigos, de la hortaliza, choclos también, todo lo que...
¿Choclo?
Sí, también nos dieron choclo el año pasado, plantamos choclo.
Hoy te vienes todo, tía.
Sí, de todo hemos plantado.
¿Ya?
Tenemos una parte donde plantamos solamente condimentos.
Condimentos.
Sí, orégano, romero, timia, coriander, toda una sola parte donde plantamos solamente aliños. También tengo un proyecto de plantar espárragos. Hay en Manchester una Ferenni donde hacen cursos para principiantes, para personas que no saben, no tienen cero conocimiento de las aves. Entonces ahí nos enseñan de cero cómo se reproducen, qué alimentos necesitan, la limpieza que hay que tener, cómo debe ser el isoliering que deben tener, cuánto alimento necesitan cuando ellas empiezan a invernar, porque ellas invernan. No es que duerman como los osos, sino que se dice invernan porque ellas no salen. Necesitan una temperatura para salir y ellas no sobreviven arriba de 10 grados.
Y en el Ferenni te enseñan sobre todo esto.
Todo eso.
Increíble.
Siempre hacen cursos. Nosotros somos como socios y esto además, esta Ferenni pertenece al Genscheppingskommun.
¿Cuesta algo?
Sí, pagamos al año 500 coronas.
¿500?
Sí, y nos llegan mensualmente una revista con toda la información actualizada de cosas que vienen. Por ejemplo, esta es mi miel. Yo necesito rotularla, o sea, etiquetarla, pero para que yo crea mi propia etiqueta, yo tengo que entregar esto a la Ferenni y ellos la mandan a Jönköping y hacen unas prueba de la limpieza del proceso de la miel, porque la miel tiene que tener una limpieza. No les interesa comercializar porque, como te digo, nosotros tenemos nuestra abeja es para que tengamos polinizadores. Porque yo no solamente alimento a la abeja, sino que también a los otros polinizadores que son los abejorros. Yo adoro los abejorros.
Lo cuidan.
Sí.
Pero, oye, qué chévere. Entonces uno podría decir que para ti te interesa más como apoyar la naturaleza.
Exactamente, ese es nuestro fin.
Me gusta.
Además, por ejemplo, en el verano cuando nosotros cosechamos nuestra papa. Yo todavía tengo mis legumbres que coseché el año pasado, tengo un refrigerador extra.
¿Todavía tenías?
Sí, ahí tengo mi ensalada de habas con arveja. Entonces, igual tenemos beneficios de nuestra tierra porque tenemos alimentos que sacamos de ella. Y la fruta en el verano, tenemos una cancha de pura frambuesa. Así que todos los años tenemos frambuesa, así que igual tenemos la maquinaria que hemos comprado, porque hemos comprado pequeñas maquinarias para arar la tierra, para cortar el pasto. Hemos hecho inversiones, pero son en provecho nuestro mismo y de la familia que viene a los veranos a disfrutar nuestra casa.
Estoy obligado a preguntarte, ¿cómo es comer la comida de tu jardín? ¿Hay como una diferencia?
Claro que sí. Un tomate de mi mata no se va a comparar con un tomate comprado en el ICA. Es dulce, la papa que yo saco es diferente, mis manzanas son diferentes. No, todo lo que yo como de mi jardín es más rico.
Así de simple.
Así de simple.
Y la lechuga,
además, la lechuga tiene otro sabor. Así que, ¿no?
Averina's story proves that there exists a future worthy of investments in Småland. We believe that she provides a sustainable solution to the current unsustainable degrowth of rural areas and the unsustainable growth of urban areas. Recently, new methods of surviving the decline of population have appeared, like bygdebolag, for example, which roughly translates to shareholder community. This has proven itself to be a viable solution to the financial issues and lack of activities in rural areas, where members of a community become part owners of different parts of the society. But we needed to find more methods on how to attract people to the rural areas, so we turned to Savio from Rural Move.
Rural Move is an association in Portugal whose mission is to activate rural areas in the country, especially the so-called low-density regions in Portugal, which is a big problem, and Rural Move aims at tackling this problem. The biggest problem in Portugal is what they call the declining population, rural areas, because obviously the less people they have, the worse the economy goes, less intellectual capital, less social initiatives, less opportunities for everybody. So Portugal's government doesn't want that to happen. So they're trying to stop that declining population. It's a hugely complex problem because if you look at the data over the years, most of these municipalities and small towns, they are declining in population, right? And that's what Rural Move aims to tackle, to at least help to slow down the curve, stabilize, then attract more and more people to the countryside. The president of Rural Move is this young man called João Almeida. So he's in charge with developing relationships with the municipalities to provide them support in terms of what we call activation. We use that terminology, which basically means going there with a bunch of people, with a group of people, and staying there for a week or so, talking to local entrepreneurs, listening to them, practicing active listening, which is hugely important at this point, trying to identify the challenges, but also the opportunities that they are having over there. And there are a lot of benefits to that initiative. Number one, I would say bringing people from a different perspective might help them solve their problems, right? Creating connections also, it's an amazing benefit because these people, they need help, but sometimes they don't know who they should go to ask for help.
Right, yeah.
Right? So Rural Move provide that environment for exchange of knowledge, socialization, exchange of ideas. And by the end of it, and I can tell you because I'm just fresh out of one of these activations which happened in Miranda do Douro. I know it's a long name, Miranda do Douro. It's in the northern region of Portugal, more precisely in the Douro River region. And we stayed there for 7 days, about 15 people. And it was amazing because on top of all the benefits that I've just laid out to you guys, there is also the exposure to the media. So as soon as the local newspaper the local radio stations, bloggers knew that we were there, they approached us and they interviewed us, right? In fact, we got interviewed by a considerably big channel. It's called Porto TV, right? It's a big channel. So after the experience, as I said before, it's not only about the exchange of information, it's not only about trying to identify problems, talking to local authorities, entrepreneurs, people on the streets, not only about that, but it's also about the leverage we can do with the media afterwards. And more people will know about Miranda do Douro, more and more people will contact Rural Move, will contact local people there, and there is a high probability that some of these people, they want to go there to stay either for a few days, for a few weeks, maybe for a few months, or move permanently to the region. Every country has its own reality, but here in Portugal, there is a massive misconception about the rural areas, right? People are really skeptical about moving there. And most of it is due to lack of information, right? If you look up on the media, on the internet, if you talk to friends who live in Portugal, they're gonna bring up Lisbon and Porto as being the two main cities where you can have a good life. I myself have been to over 30 different municipalities or regions, if you like, and I can attest with a pretty strong level of certainty that that's not the case at all, right? I've just moved to a small town. It's not quite small. It's a 50,000 inhabitant
50.
kind of city. 50. So for Portugal, that's a middle-sized kind of city.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yes.
Okay. And I've just moved here, but I could have moved to 10 other cities that I would have a pretty reasonable quality of life as well. And I would actually say in some of them, perhaps even better than Porto and Lisbon, given the increase in population, prices, inflation, all of that in those big cities.
Yeah. All right.
Sure. I think I base my actions and my work with Rural Move a lot on what our president, João Almeida, says. He wants to live, by the way, he's born and bred in the countryside. So he speaks from experience. And his vision is that we can one day live in the countryside of Portugal in highly active cities and surrounded by happy people. So that's the vision, that's the overall vision, right? And as long as we can see that slowly but steadily happening in some of these municipalities in which we have been working, such as Mação, Miranda do Douro, Viana do Castelo, Amarante, Nelas. Nelas is a really interesting case as well, and a few others. As long as you can see these places being recognized as dynamic places where happy people can be there, can have a good life and a happy life, that's a very good metric for us. But obviously, you can break that down in smaller metrics as well. Every day or even every week in the countryside, doing the activation experiences, as we call it. So they happen quite sporadically. The last one was at the beginning of January this year, so it's been almost 2 months. The last one. In between, we had another one in this small town called Nelas, yes, from what I can recall. And we're gonna have another one in April. So let's say one activity every 2 months, let's put it this way, right? So in those experiences, we recognize the results as being highly successful. And that's not coming from our own personal opinions, but that's coming from the local authorities, the local entrepreneurs, and other players who actually live there, and they can see with their own eyes the results being brought to them in terms of people going there, in terms of people contacting them, and also, as I said before, all the exposure to the media.
Nice.
There is one specific case, which is in a city called Maçã, right? I'm not quite sure about the population, but I would guess it'll be something between 5,000 and 7,000 people. And the thing that I want to bring it up now is that there is one of our members, this man called Rui Santos. He's actually one of our community managers for Maçã, for that specific town. And him alone, by telling his stories, by talking on podcasts, by answering emails, by talking to the community, and by bringing new activities to that region, he was able by himself to bring 12 friends to buy houses in that city. And that's huge.
Yeah,
For a city of 5,000 people, one person moved there only a few years ago from Berlin, from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And then in a matter of a few years, has been able to invite and successfully help 12 friends to buy houses there. That's massive. We usually don't try to convince anybody to move to the countryside. So in our case, we only talk to early adopters and to the early majority, who are people who are willing to listen. They have a tendency to like the countryside. They have a primary preference to move to the countryside. They are facing problems in big cities, so they are craving reliable information about the countryside. So we talk to these people. These other here, the late majority and the laggards, these are hardcore urban life lovers. You're gonna leave them alone. There is nothing wrong in living in big cities if you are okay with the problems. It's their right to do that. So we don't talk to them. Our communication is geared towards early adopters and early majority, mainly. If somebody asks me why they should live in the countryside, I would tell them that they shouldn't listen to my answer. They should come and live for a month, and then compare this month to the prior month when they were living in big cities, and reflect by themselves how they felt in terms of work, in terms of social life, in terms of socializing, in terms of also mental health. So do an experiment. Stay for a month in Vila Real over here, or in Amarante, or in Miranda do Douro. After a month, you answer that question to yourself. That's what I would say.
Rural Move provided us with a blueprint on how to fix the problems of urbanization, but we needed to understand why people left the community in the first place. So I reached out to some old friends of mine from Gislaved, and this is their story.
I was born in Bosnia, in a town called Mostar, and I came to Sweden as a refugee in the early 90s. Got settled in a small town in Småland, Sweden, Gislaved.
I was born and raised in Gislaved,
with a lot of other refugees from Bosnia at that time.
I lived there until I was like 23, I think. Then I moved to Gothenburg.
I spent my younger years there till I graduated from high school, and then I moved to Växjö first and studied there.
How was it like growing up in Småland, Gislaved?
It was good.
It was both good and bad. If I compare to my friends that I work with and friends I have here in Gothenburg who grew up in a bigger city, some of the experiences I feel like I've missed out on in some aspects, but I also feel that they have missed out in a lot of aspects that we have. It was like more of a close-knit community. Everybody knew each other.
It's very genuine, I think. It's everybody knows each other on good and bad, maybe.
It was easier to be in touch with nature. You could easier just walk out in the forest. It wasn't a project. Now it takes me 20-40 minutes just to get to a forest.
So it's like everybody is involved in some way in different kind, and you meet people with different backgrounds in, I think, easier way than in bigger cities where it's more like it's, even though people are rich and poor in Gislaved, maybe they all go to same schools, they are playing the same football team.
Also, when I think about schools, we had better schools in some aspects, that it was easier. You didn't have a choice which school you went to, so all those choices were already made. It was not like it's here that the rich kids go to one school, the poor kids go to one school, the foreigners to one school, the Swedes to one school.
I like my childhood, actually. I feel that Gislaved have like taught me a lot. Maybe it's bad also in some way to grow up where everybody thinks in the same way. That can be on small places where you don't have so much new thinking, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't segregated. It was segregated, but the schools were segregated in the same way as it is here in the city. I treasured that it was, I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia from being a child. It was so much easier to meet people, to meet with your friends than it is now.
People, they're getting more and more of themselves in a small city. They don't think, they don't bring in new stuff. It's like same every day, and people getting they be like the parents, like in some way. I was traveling to Australia for a couple of months and then to Asia, and I met different kind of people, view my mind a little bit. So after that I thought that in Gislaved I was kind of a person that everybody knows me for. So I wanted to like be myself in a new way from the early age, and then it's hard to like change your status or who you are in that environment.
It was easier with the choices. All the choices were already made for you, but it was also, that was a problem because you didn't have any choices growing up to do things that you wanted. Me growing up, I always wanted to play basketball. We didn't have any basketball.
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't have any opportunities to like go to museums, like the cultural capital.
If I get kids, then I want maybe my kids to have the same kind of childhood as I have. And I think I lived in a house with my parents. We have close to the forest. We have like people were always like playing at the streets, and you know your neighbor and like that. So in some way I want the same for my children. And right now I live in Stockholm in an apartment. In some way I want the same for my children. So actually right now I'm not gonna move back to Gislaved, but in someday I maybe want, maybe not Gislaved, but in same like
type of environment, right, where everyone knows each other and is safer. You feel like it's a safer way for your children to grow up?
Not a safer, but maybe a better. I want my child to be safe, but not too safe.
Yeah.
You know, they need to experience things.
I've always wanted to study because I never wanted to live in Gislaved. I never wanted to like stay there, and I've always had some idea that I wanted to be a teacher. I thought that I would just move away the day I graduated, and I moved to Växjö. Why I fell on Växjö, I don't know. To this day, I'm not really sure why I moved there, because I was supposed to move to Gothenburg, and then I changed my mind the last day and moved to it.
And you studied to become a teacher of history, right?
History and social science.
Yeah. So why history?
Well, I've always had an interest in stories. History is especially when it's like older history. It's more like stories that are told. Like, why do we care about history? Why do we in Sweden speak about Gustav Vasa? Why is he important to us? I always thought that history was interesting, and I knew that I won't be able to make a living working with history, so I have to do something with that, and teaching felt like the most natural way for me. But I felt that, and it was not that much about that I felt that Växjö per se was small, but it was just that it was so isolated there in the woods. The nearest town was Kalmar, and that's not even a town. And then you had to take the train to get to Malmö, and that's 2.5 hours away.
Did you ever consider moving back to Gislaved?
No, never. I never felt that. And during my time studying, I had a lot of times old teachers used to call me and ask if I wanted to come work because they had problems getting people to work at the schools in Gislaved, because Gislaved is also very isolated. It's like an hour away from the nearest bigger town. No. I think it's claustrophobic for me. That was the case with Gislaved, and that was the case with Växjö.
What do you do for a living? What do you work with?
I work with everything. HR, salesman. I work in construction, bring in project to our workers, and I have responsible for workers, like a HR person.
Here's the interesting part, the history teacher that moved from Småland went to Gothenburg. You love stories, you love community, and you ended up buying a comic book store. Can you tell us a bit about that? What happened?
That was not so much a choice by me. It was not that I was like, I'll try and find this, but it was a friend of mine who's more of a comic book nerd maybe than me. Yeah, a comic book store where I live. It was a comic book store, and it was like an old man who owned it, and he did it just for the sake of having a comic book store. That was like his passion. And he died. And a lot of the customers thought that we should like keep his spirit going with this comic book, so we can just let it decay. So a lot of the customers got together and started our own comic book store, so we took it over.
But it's the same location, right? It's the same store.
Yeah, it's the same store.
So how many people are you partnering up with?
I think we're maybe 15.
15?
Yeah.
So would you then say that you then feel as a part of a community in Gothenburg by doing this?
Maybe a little. I can still feel that it's quite fun to work there, because everybody who works there works pro bono. We don't get paid anything. We just do it because it's fun. But because I'm working full-time as a teacher and I'm studying, and I have a little child at home, so I don't feel like that I have that much time. So for me, I don't like to take a lot of responsibility when it comes to the store. So I just feel like I come there just to hang out with people, like comic books, and just sit there, because it's not that hard. It's not like we want to make a lot of money on it. The plan with it is just to keep it going. So.
But you do most of your job remotely, right?
Both.
How much does it vary? Because you're like semi-nomadic almost, like you traveled for work to Gothenburg, right?
Yeah, because I'm managing Gothenburg and Stockholm. I can work from home 4 or 5 days if I want. Probably.
Of a week?
Yeah. But
that's the whole week.
Can work if I want to. I can work 4 of 5 days at home.
Oh yeah, 4 or 5 days at home. Yeah.
But in the other time, I need to go out to our projects and have meetings. But I could manage with working home. After this Corona thing, I think it opened up views for companies that people now, when they apply for work, sometimes they want to work at home. It's a new experience I discovered. So before Corona, you didn't have that kind of demand, which is good for not the suburb, for the Gislaved, because then you can work on bigger companies, but you can still live in Gislaved. Because I can manage my work with Teams, I can work with my administrative, with my phone and everything. I don't rely on being in a place. It's a new thing for company to compete with other companies, because you have to provide these kind of benefits right now for people to be able to work at home. Otherwise, you'll be lower on the scale. Then you maybe have to raise the salary instead.
Okay. What would Småland have to offer for you to want to move back to Småland? It could be any place in Småland, except the cities, like the rural areas.
Ooh, I don't know. For me, it's the distance, that it's so long from everything. That's the problem. It's not even that long from everything, but it feels like very long. So if, for example, I could easier move to a small town around Gothenburg.
Yeah.
That's like an hour away from Gothenburg. That feels more soothing for me than to move somewhere where I know it's me in the woods.
You know about the high-speed rails that they're building in Sweden, right? I mean, they keep moving.
I've got a lot of interest in big city planning. I don't know why, but I like it. Yeah, I read a lot about that.
One of the, I guess you would call it rails, are going through Småland. They're going through Värnamo, upwards towards Jönköping, I think. Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö is connected. So they're connected through Småland. And I'm not sure what the time would be like if you were to live in Värnamo and travel to Gothenburg, but I think it's less than an hour if you were to use this high-speed rail. If it was something like that, would you then consider moving back to Småland if it was already in place?
Maybe. It would be easier, I think.
You have a lot of friends. How many of the friends you hang with are from Stockholm, and how many of them are from Småland?
Nobody is from Stockholm from the beginning.
All right, so everyone's from Småland.
Most of them who I hang with is from Gislaved, actually. But they moved to Stockholm.
Yeah.
People often move in groups. They go where they believe they have a brighter future. With new technologies developing, the emergence of a new group of people came to existence. Digital nomads. Free to move where they please, they are a potential solution for the many issues tied to urbanization. With the pandemic hitting the planet, the amount of digital nomads multiplied. So we decided to reach out to some of them to hear them out, since they could potentially save the planet.
Born and raised in Pakistan, in a city called Lahore. It's a big city, very highly populated. I think around 12 million people probably. A very busy city, not a lot of peace and quietness as someone would want.
I was born in Yemen, in Sana'a. Yeah, and I spent 19 years of my life there. I grew up there. And then I moved. Yeah, I moved after Yemen. I moved for 1 year in Saudi Arabia. And then I moved to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, for university. I spent 3 years there. And after that, I moved to Sweden, where I spent the last 4 years.
I started working almost maybe 10 months ago as an actuarial analyst in an American firm, American-British. The company is called W2W. A few years back, it was one American company and one British company was merged. So they have head offices in US and in London, but they have a regional hub based in Lisbon. So I work in actuarial. It's part of finance, and I specifically work in the retirement fund of companies in Germany, assessing their liabilities in the years to come.
Currently, I'm studying front-end development and web development. Yeah, which is the structuring and building of websites and web apps, mobile apps as well. So it's digital mostly.
Do you believe that in the future that you will be mostly working remotely?
Yeah, to be honest, that's one of my main goals. It's one of the reasons why I went with. I mean, there are many jobs which are remote, 100% remote. So you can be wherever you want and still do your work.
The contract I have with my company is a hybrid model. It's not hybrid, I would say. I mean, I can work remotely as long as if there is an important meeting, I'm able to come to the office. So the office is based in Lisbon, but I can work anywhere in Portugal, keeping in mind that if there is something important and they want me to be there, I must come.
What are the pros working as a digital nomad?
Flexibility, I would say. To go to the office, you have to get up early, get ready, go to the office. And then there is part where you have to commute, so that takes time. So to get to the office, let's say if your day starts at 9 a.m., you have to be up at 7. You're working from home, you can get up at 8:30, and you're good for work. I mean, you have flexibility, you can have lunch at any time you want. Whenever you feel hungry, you can have lunch, as long as you're managing your work well. When you're working in the office, you're restricted on things you can do. There's you have to do something. For example, you have to go to bank for half an hour and come back. You can't do that while you're at the office. When you are working digitally or remotely, it's easier to manage life and work together. Some days I can stay till 8 and 9 p.m. and get my work done. I don't have to finish at 5.
Sounds like if you stay at home, you don't commute, as you mentioned, then you save money on not having to go to your job as well.
You don't spend money on commute. You just work from home. There's definitely comfort. There's flexibility. There is comfort. You save money. It's healthy for life. To balance your working life and your regular activities. It's a healthy way to do things. Yeah, but then there are cons as well.
Yes.
You don't interact with anyone. Yeah, when you're working in the office, you have colleagues. You build good relationships with them. When you're there, you will go for lunch together. You'll go for a coffee break together. So you speak to each other. It builds this relationship with your colleagues. But when you're working remotely, there is almost zero contact unless you have to join on a certain project or a certain work that requires input from other colleagues. Other than that, you don't really interact with other people. When I was working there in the beginning for 3 months, we were going to the office regularly, and I stayed in Lisbon after that as well. So the relationship that I had with colleagues there, it was back then. That's when I formed it, or that's when it developed. Now, I speak to them maybe once in a while, but those are the only people I speak to. I wouldn't go out of my circle. I wouldn't meet someone new. This I could have done. This I could do when I was working in the office. I mean, you meet people from other teams as well, not just your team. You meet people who are working on different teams, and that's nice. It definitely helps you in your professional career as well. There are people there who've been working for maybe 10, 12 years. They give you advice on how to do things and how to build your career, and you wouldn't get those things if you're working remotely.
Yeah.
So where in the future would you like to live?
I would like to live with a place with nice weather, to be honest.
Nice weather. So what is nice weather for someone like Loyal Shawafi?
Warm.
Mm-hmm.
I think warm. And I'd like to be in a place where there's a balance between city life and nature, and where you can do both. You can have the city life, and then if you want, you can go out and have your time walking in forests and stuff.
So when you say all of that, does anything come into mind, like any areas that you could consider living in? Is it Sweden, for example?
No, not Sweden. But I can see some places in Sweden where I can live. Yeah, I would prefer somewhere, let's say south of Europe, like Spain, Portugal, the islands over there.
Is it mostly due to the weather? Is that the main thing, the main issue you have?
No, actually, I think it's also about the social life. Yeah, I'd like to be in a place where it's more social than Sweden, I'd say, and the weather. And I'd like to live in a place where I have many options. I have options for stuff to do. Like, I won't be limited.
Would a possible solution for you be to live in a more rural area, like, for example, Småland?
It depends on transportation. I've considered it before, and as long as I can go to a city that is close or nearby, I have my own car, yeah, I'd probably do it. Because for me, my work will be mostly in front of the screen on the computer. So yeah, I think it will be beneficial for me to be away from that.
So,
Yeah.
for example, let's say, I mean, the more rural you get, the more value you get for your money, right? So, for example, if you were to buy a house in, let's say, Stockholm, that's at least 7-8 million crowns. And that's not even like the best houses, right? You want the fancy houses, that's 10 million plus at least, like 20 million. But like in some areas, for example, the area we are considering working in called Hestra, I think you're one of our targets that we're going to probably bring. So we'll see what you think about it. There, let's say you buy a house for less than 1 million crown, and you have the trains passing by too. So it's like 1.5 hours, just taking the train like 5 minutes from where you live to Gothenburg.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, this is the point I was going to say. Like, I'm always open to live in places where I can get to a city, like if it's an hour and a half away, and there is transportation available. Yeah, so I'd be open for that.
A sense of community where you live, does it matter to you?
Yes, and in Stockholm, that's it doesn't exist. I think it's better in smaller areas. You feel like more connected to the people around you.
So one of the solutions that has occurred in Småland these last couple of years is something called Bygdebolag, which is more or less the community that still remains in the small rural areas, like small towns, small villages. They come together and they purchase the things they like for example, a restaurant is going out of business, so this Bygdebolag, they bought the restaurant, they own it, and they employ people that works there. And they do the same thing for like abandoned houses. They buy the abandoned houses, they fix them up, and they rent it out. So something like that, if you want to do something like that in big cities, that's very hard. But in Småland, that could be like an easy investment.
So like you have shares everywhere.
Yeah.
And things you don't have to even have like a experience in it or anything. It could be farming, it could be a restaurant, it could be anything, but you always have a share.
Yeah. So the farming thing, for example, the same thing there. They bought farms, but they don't know how to do farming. So they employed a farmer. So they get easy access to cheap food. And that's, I guess that's sustainable and financially smart. Considering all the economy.
That's actually interesting because I've always wanted to have like multiple sources of income. And this sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Like you can do your work and then you have these other incomes that you get without doing anything.
I want to ask, where would you like to live in the future, like near future?
For me, I've always lived in big cities. So all my life, I grew up in Lahore, huge city, then London, and then Lisbon. That's big cities. So recently, I've come to this realization that the life in cities is too hectic. And for me, an ideal place would be a town that is somewhere in the middle. It's closer to a city where I can commute easily and see life as well that happens in the city.
Right.
But also closer to nature and a quiet and a very calm, peaceful place. Something like that would be nice. Don't close at 8 p.m. I can't live in a village which has nothing. It has to have restaurants. It has to have some social life, bars, cafes. It has to have some physical activities, sports or gym, and it has to have a nice vibe.
Nice
people, for example, coming to this area, I've realized that people are very friendly towards you. First time I went to a cafe in Villa Kya, the city I'm living in, the guy knew at once that I am someone in this area because most of the people here are Portuguese. Since I've come here, I haven't seen someone from Pakistan. I mean, you can tell from their face. And they ask you, how long have you been living here? Are you here for long? Are you here for short term? And the guy who was working at the cafe, who was actually the owner of the cafe, he willingly volunteered to take me around and show me the city. You wouldn't see such thing anywhere in Lisbon.
Right.
Nobody would offer something like this to you. Everyone is too busy. Here, people are comfortable. They have this more connected to each other, I would say. I would really appreciate if I'm living in a place where people are connected to each other and there is this definitely a good vibe, where people are happy and more interested in just building a nice relationship with the community.
We want to know, why did you move to a rural area?
I mean, one of the reasons was I couldn't find a place. So when I moved out of the apartment, I moved out to another shared co-living kind of thing, where we had multiple rooms and common areas for people who were living there. It was a shared living. But because the condition of the building was too old and we had some crazy rain in Lisbon, the ceiling of the building collapsed, so everyone had to move out. After that, we couldn't find a place. It was either too expensive, not worth living in a place which doesn't make you so satisfied with where you are. So where you're living, you have to be at peace. I can't live at a place where I'm not happy. Mentally, I won't be okay. It will affect my work, it will affect my social life, it will affect everything in my daily life.
Yeah.
I have to be in a place where I feel happy and I'm satisfied with what I'm living. I couldn't find that in Lisbon. Lisbon, not just the housing, everything was too expensive. Everything was getting too expensive. Portugal, the amount of income of people in Portugal is not so well compared to the rise in inflation in the last 1 year. It got very difficult for people to manage. I didn't have the need to be in Lisbon, I wasn't obliged by my work to be there. I had the option to move, and I just took that option. And I had been living in Lisbon since I moved to Portugal, and I thought North would be a good place to go, see how life is in the north of Portugal. And I'm very glad with the decision I made. Facilities, you have all the options, you have a very beautiful city surrounded by nature, you're more at peace, it's clean, it's cheap. So, those were the reasons for us to look into options outside Lisbon.
Okay, so we're done with the questions here, but I have some follow-up questions. We'll take them. We have 2.5 minutes left. So has Amal told you about the location we chose for our project, Hestra?
Yeah.
Right. Have you seen anything of it?
No. I mean, she sent me a few pictures, but it didn't have anything to do with the place itself.
It's a really small town. I think it's less than 1,000 people, but it's got trains that take you to, for example, to Gothenburg in about 1.5 hours, I think. So it's got plenty of nature, golf, mountain climbing, skiing, different types of activities, plenty of lakes. Like even with beach lakes, it doesn't feel real. The only problem, obviously, is the weather, right? You can't really rely on the Swedish weather. But you, as a digital nomad, living in a place like that is much, much cheaper than living in Stockholm, Gothenburg. Would that work for you if it was like an hour, 2 hours away from a big city, but you had accessibility to the big cities?
I'll speak for myself. We work to have a good life. You go to work, and if it's all about moving to a cheap place, it's not worth for me to move there. The place has to offer me something. The place has to offer me facilities. The place has to offer me... I don't mind the weather. I mean, Växjö isn't much different when it comes to weather. If it's snowing, it's snowing. You don't really have many options. Even in a city like Växjö, you need a car, especially in the winter.
No.
This has to offer something. It has to offer me some facilities. Not a lot of facilities. I'm not asking, it has to have everything. Activities that I can participate or, keep myself busy with. It has to have some options for restaurants, for food. And it has to have some kind of social life in the city. Or a town, or a village, whatever it is. It has to have some social life. Because weather, I don't think, is that big of a barrier. If it's snowing 9 months or 8 months in a year, it doesn't really make much of a difference for me. It's the same thing. If in any case, I would have to... I think Sweden is not a country where you can live a very convenient life without a car. If you have a car, you can go 25 minutes drive rather than a 15 minutes drive. It won't make that big of a difference in your life. I would be willing to do it, but at the same time, it has to have something for me to make that decision. Let's say Veco, it has options. The weather isn't the perfect for me. With a car, you can go drive 5-10 minutes and you can get things done. You have the options, you have stores where you can buy things from a variety of things. You're not restricted to just, for example, ICA. You're not just restricted to ICA or Coop. You have other options as well. And someone who's not from Sweden, it definitely helps to know that you can buy things for yourself or the things you need from around, I don't think weather is the problem for me. The problem is the options that the city is offering. People as well. I mean, for me, it doesn't make a difference with people as well, because people all around in Sweden, they're a bit cold. They're not so open to meeting, strangers. They live in a very restricted social circles, and it's okay. So you won't feel the difference like I felt in Portugal. I won't feel that difference in Sweden, because it doesn't matter if it's Lisbon or if it's Stockholm or this city you're talking about. People are the same. They behave the same. But that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that won't be the deciding factor. Weather won't be the deciding factor for me as well. For me, the deciding factor would be the facilities and the options the place is offering.
Would you say that if this place offers you a sense of community, would that be a factor that you would consider?
Yeah, if the city has some good restaurants that I can go out to on a Friday night or Saturday night and enjoy my weekend as well, and it has some kind of activities. I don't know. For example, in Veco we have paddle, you have tennis, you have squash, you have gyms, and these kind of activities where you can keep a healthy life between work and your social life. So these things are important for someone to consider a place that you're moving to.
So for you lived in cities, big cities as well. You've seen what that does to people. You've seen how it affects you. So it sounds like for someone who has the option, like you do, to live as a digital nomad, you prioritize quality of life before,
for sure.
Right?
For sure.
So even though you're able to compromise. Like, yeah, I see all the benefits of living in a city. It's nice when you haven't cooked and you can go out and have some delicious food.
Yeah.
But I don't want to pay the extra money for a worse quality of life. Is that?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth it.
Te quería contar cuánto costó la casa.
La casa, cuando compramos la casa, nos costó 720.000 coronas.
Qué barato.
Sí.
Increíble.
So, currently, right now, how much are you paying for the apartments monthly?
This 15,000.
15.
I'm gonna move. Yeah, 15. But I'm gonna move now to a first hand. We will move to apartment costing 13,000.
You guys bought an absolutely beautiful apartment in Gothenburg. An estimation of how much it cost?
Around 4.2 million.
Crowns, Swedish crowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to renovate it.
Okay.
So
how much extra would you?
Maybe 4.6.
Okay. What's the pros about living in Gothenburg?
A lot. The choices, more choices to do things, activities, but not even activities, just that I can go out to a different restaurant every day for the rest of my life.
I'm feeling younger, like 10 years younger maybe. Here, if you are 32, you can go out, drink beers, even go to clubs. Back home, everybody have children right now. Produce children much earlier. It can be a pro or a con. In small town, in some way, people get bored because it's not so much to experience, to discover. So instead, they replace that with making babies.
Yeah.
All right.
And there's a lot more different people I feel like I live in a metropolitan city. Like my neighbors, they're from Greece, Iran, I've got from Brazil. They're from all over the world.
You have shops open till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. You have restaurants open till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. You have, if you want to order food, you have options. The commute, the public transport is far better in cities. The network of buses and trains is far better in cities. Within a small circle, you get a lot of options for yourself. Diversity of people. Living in Lisbon, you could see people from 20 different nationalities, just on a walk in the evening. You would see people with different cultures, different faces. You won't see that in small towns. Same people. I like diverse areas for sure, because it brings in different perspectives and it gets you more aware of other people.
Nightlife, clubbing, you can go whenever you want. Sports, you can play any sport you want.
What are the cons then?
I take the tram, and there are like crazy people on the tram and alcoholics. And because I live centrally, it's no point in me to have a car, because I won't need a car. So that's like one of the things that is a little bit hassle, because I have to like plan my trips. I can't just go out, take my car and get away.
Yeah. I think traffic, it gets too loud sometimes. Sometimes you want the quietness, you want just to relax. And in Stockholm, I think it's loud most of the time.
I cannot afford a big house in Stockholm. I want to have this, like, when I have children, I don't want going out drinking beer. It's not going to be so interesting anymore. So then maybe I could look for opportunities for better lifestyle, like maybe bigger, so I can have children, and maybe closer to forest. And I also feel that it's a lot of opportunities here, but work for me is secondary.
Nobody gives a shit about you, because I remember when I was looking for an apartment in Lisbon, there's a waiting list. Even though you're willing to pay the amount that the landlord is asking, you have all the credentials, you have a stable income coming, you can completely afford the apartment, you're fit for the apartment. But the number of people who are looking for a place in Lisbon or a big city like Lisbon, it's too many people. When you go see an apartment, the landlord tells you, I have 20 visits coming this day, so you go and I will see. I was looking for a place in Lisbon for maybe 2 months, and I wasn't able to find anything. There is nothing, and the things that are available, the money that they're asking for that place is not worth it. For example, one of the incidents that happened, I went to see a room near my office, and the person had advertised 500 euros, the amount in the room. I went and saw. It was a shared room, 2 single beds in a room. So he was planning to have another person in the same room with me. Nowhere in the world you would pay 500 euros to be sharing a room with someone. Recently, it has been a big influx of people coming in from all around Europe and all around the world, digital nomads, and living in Lisbon, because the city does offer a lot of things to the people, but the infrastructure of the city is not that developed to manage this many people. The buildings are very old. The condition of the state of the buildings is not so good. So in that perspective, you don't feel welcomed in the area. For example, here, when we got the house here, the landlord was, you can see the difference in the behavior of the landlords. They're happy to have you here. In Lisbon, the mentality is totally different.
They don't have to be nice to you.
Yeah, they don't have to be nice to you. They've got to be people looking for a place. Lisbon wasn't that clean compared to this city that we moved to, even though it's the capital. But you would find to be dirty. You would see people, just pissing on the street on a Friday night or Saturday night. You won't see such things here. This city is far more cleaner. It's very organized. It's very scenic. The north of Portugal is very scenic because it's full of mountains.
I think we all have different priorities in life and different preferences, but some of these problems in big cities are quite obvious, right? Traffic, violence, For example, in Lisbon, there are quite a few neighborhoods that are not very pleasant to be in. The increase in population was so happened so out of control that it really took a toll on the neighborhood itself. But I think there are some other things that people don't measure because they are not quite visible. For instance, your time. Right? Your time is your most important resource. So if you waste 1 or 2 hours per day in waiting in traffic or waiting in hospital receptions or waiting in line when you go to pay for something, which doesn't happen in the countryside, right? So there are hardly ever lines in the countryside because the population is so small. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about that, and he went to the hospital to schedule an appointment with the doctor. He was received like that as soon as he arrived there. And even better, they scheduled the appointment for the next day. So that doesn't happen in Lisbon. Okay, that's unheard of in Lisbon.
Right.
So I would say all those time wasters that big cities impose on us, people don't notice that, they don't talk about that. It's very hard to measure that. But at the end of the year, I can assure you that means a couple of 100 hours down the drain.
So, inspired by Rural Move, we decided to go ahead and actually gather people. This should be enough to spark a bit of interest in our target group, so we brought a couple of digital nomads and drove towards Hestra, but this time to explore the activities since this was a major concern in the interviews. Since we are polio students, we only brought them for 1 day, so how much fun can you have in Hestra in 1 day? Let's find out. So first of all, Hestra is in the northwest of Småland with around 1,500 inhabitants. They offer golf courses, beautiful golf courses. I love nature. They have a ski resort, a mountain with lakes, beautiful views. They have a beautiful little restaurant called Loft. As you can see, there's a lot of space inside. It's quite beautiful, nice food. They have a little souvenir shop inside with postcards and magnets, obviously. And really nearby you find Hestraviken, which is a hotel and a spa where they just recently installed all of this, like new swimming pools, jacuzzis and everything right next to the beautiful river Nissan. If you don't want to be outside, they have a little fireplace with beds where you can relax. And here you have Nissan. Amazing. They also have a restaurant in Hestraviken. I'm gonna show you a quick little tour of it. So often a critique is these small towns don't have anything to offer, but as you can see, there's plenty of space here as well. And if the river wasn't good enough, you will also have the option of looking at the lake right next to it. And for activities, Isabai offers mountain biking and golf, actually, mini golf as well, which our digital nomads got to try out. And if you don't want to do that, you have the roller coaster on the actual mountain. And I'm gonna let our digital nomads speak for themselves. And they also offer treetop climbing, where it starts off with an introduction, instructions for how to climb safely, And even though one of our digital nomad was afraid of heights, this was a major issue. They have plenty of zip lines and different levels of difficulties depending on how brave you are feeling at the moment. Isabai, since it is a mountain, also offers a lot of beautiful views. And as it is very close to nature, or I should say embraced by nature, you have plenty of spaces where you can go and be alone with you and your friends and enjoy nature.
Three, 4, 8, you record.
Question. Give us your thoughts on the activities.
Not just the activities, but Hestra.
Hestra in general. Did it surprise you?
It did. Definitely did.
I wasn't expecting so many activities in one.
Like
in a place like this.
Yeah.
The first time I came here, it was also nice, but I didn't see many activities. But today, it was different.
So imagine, like, if you move to a big city, you pay 10 million for a house. Here you pay around 700,000, and you got the train station that brings you to Gothenburg. It takes about 1.5 hours. Would it be a place you could imagine living in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider it for sure.
Yeah.
A place, I mean, not this specifically, but a place of this size with similar activities and similar touch of nature. The peace and calm, I would consider it for sure.
I also like that they have activities for the summer and then activities for the winter.
For sure.
Agreed. Well said. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for taking us.